Thanks for having
Great to
me.
be here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with Doug, because Doug, this summer for higher ed felt like one that we haven't seen before. It was probably a crazy time on your beat. I would imagine there were lots of stories about anti-Semitism and of settlements and other negotiations between the Trump administration, Columbia, Brown, Harvard, Cornell, UCLA, UVA, George Mason. I kind of sound like the bottom of the ticker on ESPN there. So what's your read on how this plays out over the next bit of time? How is the kind of administration picking in your mind, which universities it goes after, which ones it exempts from this, and ultimately the numbers and the parameters of the deals?
So I think they're getting a lot of information from folks on campuses, and they're looking into that, seeing what, where they think it's hottest. They have a lot of information coming in from the House committee. They've done a lot of interviews there. My guess is that as they make clear the fact that they are going to have a heavy hand on this, most schools are going to fall in line, as many have, so that there's less aggression needed from the White House.
So how, though, have some schools like Dartmouth, Yale, Stanford, how have they've so far at least seemed to stay off the radar? What's been going on there?
Yeah, that part's an interesting question. So Dartmouth, right? The president there has kind of tried to sidestep a lot of the stuff. She didn't sign a letter of protest that a lot of other presidents did. There's probably some degree of luck happening, and there may be a lot of stuff waiting in the wings that I wouldn't make any predictions about who's next with regard to any of the particularly elite schools.
So, Hillary, I know you also have some sense about why Harvard was a target and how places like Vanderbilt in particular have won favor with the Trump administration. What would you add to why there seems to be a little bit of randomness to all this? Like, why some schools and not others?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one we've spent a lot of time thinking about and talking about. I think to Doug's point, like the colleges that appeared before the House Committee on Education and the Workforce are schools that the Republicans have issues with. So we're seeing, I remember being at that first congressional hearing with the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn, and a lot of what was talked about in that very long hearing are the grievances that we're now seeing them act on today, like more than just anti-Semitism, but also transgender athletes and DEI and, classes they think are too woke in the curriculum. So I keep going back to those hearings for why. And also they're going after schools that have powerful brands and people know to make an impact. That much is very clear. And Harvard, when they did sue and stand up to the demand letter back in the spring, that's we spoke with an attorney who worked with Trump previously, who said, well, if we know anything about him, it's if you hit him, he'll hit back harder. So that's our take on why Harvard.
Hillary, I want to stay on this topic for a moment with you because you've obviously been close to this, reporting on things happening both at Harvard and MIT specifically, but you've also been looking at a more global view of how higher education might emerge from this moment, not just in the negotiations, but also vis-a-vis funding, the endowment tax, changes in student loan policy, and more. You had a very interesting article titled "Universities in Red States and Heartland May Be Winners as Ivy League Contends with Trump Onslaught." And in that, you quoted something that President Trump said in his commencement speech at the University of Alabama, and I'll read it, where he said, "It is clear to see the next chapter of the American story will not be written by the Harvard Crimson," he told a cheering crowd of thousands. "It will be written by you, the Crimson Tide." So is there a chance that the real focus here is perhaps less on attacking higher ed writ large and more maybe on recentering it or changing its ideological and geographical